It's my hope that whether you're on the left or whether you're on the right, that we're all Americans. And we're coming together, pulling together as a nation. This is a great song for that. Love is but a song we sing, and fear's the way we die. You can make the mountains ring, or make the angels cry.
So we're going to have one more set of speakers here, and then we'll let the band play for a little while. We have some special guests that have spoken at our Tea Party meeting before. Can anybody tell me if you've ever heard of the word socialism? Are we on the verge? Do we have our foot into socialism in this country? Okay, well, we have a couple here who have written a book about socialism where they have actually done some interviewing and research from people who have actually come from other countries where socialism is a part of their lifestyle there. And they are telling us that they're seeing the same things happening here. So I'd like to introduce to you now Cory Emberson and Rick Lindstrom, and they're going to tell you a little bit about what they've been doing and learning.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm Cory. The tall one here is Rick, and it's so nice to be back. We co-wrote a book called Pursuing Liberty, America Through the Eyes of the Newly Free, and there's our show and tell there. And basically what we did was we talked to 9 different people from 8 countries who grew up under tyranny, under socialism, communism, Sharia law, and what Venezuela became. We learned a lot. We learned that we were not overreacting when the idea for the book first came about. And we also learned that the people that we spoke to were absolutely spot on because they lived this movie and it never ever has a good ending. The insight that we got from them was extremely valuable. We all know how a tyranny ends. That's when you see the missile parades going down the streets and the people being blockaded in their own neighborhoods. They gave us the insight of what happens when a tyranny starts, and that was from the inside. In October of 1964, Ronald Reagan gave probably the best speech in his life, A Time for Choosing. And there's something that he said in that isn't heard a whole lot, but I think really applies to what we learned. So I'll just quote him for a little bit. Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. Not too long ago, 2 friends of mine were talking to a Cuban refugee, a businessman who had escaped from Castro. In the midst of a story, one of my friends turned to the other and said, "We don't know how lucky we are." And the Cuban stopped and said, "How lucky you are. I had some place to escape to." And in that sentence, he told us the entire story. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And I didn't realize that's how that famous quote started. What we see happening here is a government that has forgotten what its relationship is to us. Our citizens' identity is starting to become the identity of a subject. And I think one of the things that our friends they're going through the same thing that we went through about 2.5 years ago. They see what's happening and you just can't believe it. And Rush and Glenn and several other people have been talking about something called a normalcy bias, where you try to take what happens around you and what you see with your own eyes and what you hear with your own ears, and you try to fit it into what you have always known to be true. And when you see what actually is happening, there's this disconnect that this is not the way it's supposed to be here. I think some of our friends who may have even voted for this current administration are starting to feel that, and it's really up to us to be able to take these stories in their own words, the people who left communism, who left socialism and Sharia law, and show them, because no, you're not nuts. This is the same thing that we've seen. Rick's part of this project was to take something that was very difficult and very encompassing and kind of depressing, which was to take the histories of these countries and compress them into a summary that shows how it got to be there in the first place. And then we launch into the narratives of the people who've escaped from these tyrannies. And that was an extremely important part of it. So I would like to introduce my co-author, Rick Lindstrom.
Thank you. That's great. Many accuse us of having a bias when we started on this project. And I've been writing for about 15 years. Cory's been writing professionally for about 12. We really tried not to inject our own perceptions, and we didn't have to, really. If there was a common theme between all the people we interviewed, it didn't matter what corner of the world they came from. It didn't matter if it was South America or it was Asia or someplace else, Mussolini's Italy. There was a common theme, and there were two, actually. Number one, tyranny always starts with a promise from the government of something for nothing. We're going to take care of something. We're going to ask you to give up a little bit of your freedom, but don't worry, you're going to get more back in our services to you. And it's the proverbial nose of the camel under the tent, and they keep taking a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And in every one of these countries, there was a revelation where one day they woke up and they said, you know what, this is not the same country that it was a short time ago. And we are no longer the people we were a short time ago. Now we have become subjects and we're oppressed. Venezuela is probably the closest thing that we have happening today to what's going on now in our own country, where the government started nationalizing more and more of the private industries. They've taken over energy, they've taken over healthcare, they've taken over food distribution, and lately they've taken over telecommunications. The last free television station was recently put out of business, essentially, and the owner of that station was last seen running down the street fearing for his life. Without getting too maudlin about it, the good news is that being the exceptional country that this is, the country that was founded with the sovereign right of the individual, where the power of the Fed is supposed to be derived from the state, and the power of the state is supposed to be derived from the individual, the consent of the governed. It's not too late for us. So when we wrote this book, we wrote it as a cautionary tale. We showed how it happens in other countries, and how it is slowly starting to happen here. We wrote it for middle schoolers on up. It's family friendly. There's 8 little short sections, 8 little countries that we profiled. So if you haven't seen the book, I would strongly encourage you just to take a look at it. And if you have children in the public school system, like mine were, it will supplant their education because for sure they're not going to get it where they are today. So, Cory, you want to talk about the Tax Day special we're offering?
Yeah, we got here through quite a bit of traffic, so we don't have our table set up yet, but we will have a Tax Day special of $15 even, and we do make a donation also to the Tea Party Patriot Group for being gracious enough to host us here. One thing I think that's really important is that if we are able to get this information across to our young people, we won't lose them. You know, we all know what's happening and we can see what's going on, we see the importance of it, but unless our kids pick that up and they see what it was like living as a child under Mussolini or under the Soviet Union or communist Poland, they really don't believe it. They see socialism as Santa Claus, and they don't see that there's a price, a very dear price to be paid. Probably the biggest thing that we would like them to know is the nature of their rights. It's not a gift from the government, it's endowed by our Creator, and it's all based on self-determination. The people who left these socialist and communist countries gave everything to be able to experience that in their lives, and it's up to us to protect it. So thank you very much.
Thank you for coming out on your busy Friday.
Thank you, Cory and Rick. We appreciate you coming. And if you have a chance to get their book and read it, the stories are really fascinating. And I think if you sat down and read them with your children, that'd be even better than just giving them the book to read. All right, we're going to have our band come back and play 2 or 3 songs for us, and then we'll have a couple of more of our guest speakers who have arrived. So enjoy the music, get up and dance, get the circulation going, and enjoy the evening.